Coming up on this episode of the Mompreneur Show, I'm interviewing Jessica Fisher. She's a devoted wife and mom of 6 children, a blogger, and a published cookbook author. I'm your host, Vicky, and this is the show that features amazing stories of the most remarkable mompreneurs. Thank you so much for tuning in. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. This is fun.
It's such a pleasure to have you. Let's start off with introducing yourself and how did you get to where you are today?
Okay, well, my name is Jessica Fisher. I am a cookbook author and freelance writer specializing in food and family. I started freelancing for parenting magazines in 2006 when I was pregnant with our 5th child, and we were trying to get right side up on our finances. Then I started blogging at lifeasmom.com in 2008 when I was pregnant with our 6th child. And a year later started Good Cheap Eats because I realized that not all of my Life as Mom readers were as into food as I was. Mm-hmm. And so it just made sense to have a separate space for the food talk. Well, I still talk about meal planning and freezer cooking and things like that on Life as Mom. More of the recipes eventually have just been curated on Good Cheap Eats and in my books. I started self-publishing in 2010, and that was the same year that I signed my first traditional book contract.
Wow.
That's the base, the beginning. Yeah. There's the beginning for you.
We're totally going to pick through it, pick at it, and ask questions as we go. So I'm really curious. You said you started your blog, one blog, and then you went and started another one a year later. Were they both active blogs, and how did you manage them both? Yes.
Well, I honestly, and I didn't, they are both still active blogs. I post 2 to 5 times on each one each week. But they have some overlapping audience, but they also have, very distinct audiences. Obviously, Good Cheap Eats is going to appeal to a wide range of people from, young college students to, moms with kids to, I think my male readers are kind of lurking. I don't think they comment as much, but I know they're there because occasionally they'll write me emails or, I've had one reader call, she knows one of the other readers, like they both go the same Y, and he saw the cookbook. He's like, you know her, and he's a reader, so the men lurk, but, the women are a little more chatty, but, so it's obviously a different audience than what might be on Life as Mom, which is primarily moms. There are some regular readers who, take care of their nieces and nephews or who are really interested in homemaking. So the topics apply to them, even if they aren't mothers, but, it's obviously a parenting and family site, whereas Good Cheap Eats is good food on a budget. So,
very interesting. How did you balance the time and mental energy for both of them at the same time?
I didn't sleep very much in the beginning. And I was nursing babies when or one baby, I was nursing and up at night. And so I was, just running on that adrenaline of, okay, I really want this to work and I can work when my kids are sleeping and that kind of thing. So I just kind of crammed it in wherever I could. I would say in the early years, I was probably guilty of, letting too many things slide on the home front, trying to do those things. Eventually it started paying off and our kids got bigger and my husband was like, oh, this is legitimate. This is like a real thing. This isn't just your hobby that is wrecking our home. So it's been a process, and I have to credit my husband for being very patient and very encouraging. And, I had a friend describe me once as a freak of nature, which if she wasn't herself a freak of nature, you might take that as an insult. But it was that idea that, I can't sit still. And I've always, even in those early years before the internet existed, I was always working on projects, or I was making things to give to people, or I did several, self-published cookbooks, not to sell, but to do as fundraisers for groups that I worked with, or for my family, just to have. So I was already doing it. So, hey, let's switch this over to get paid for this kind of thing.
So interesting. Oh my gosh. I have so many questions for you. So going back a bit about what you mentioned about being so into your hobby and really working, being so driven, and then letting things at home slide. So how did you deal with that? Because I deal with that too. And thankfully, my husband has come to an understanding. Like he gets more now, but in the beginning, oh my gosh, it was so hard because physically, you just can't take care of your children all day and then do the housework and then do this. It's either this, like the business, the drive, or the housework, and it's always the business. So I would like to hear you elaborate on.
This was 2008. This was like the cusp of when people started thinking about blogs as
exactly
jobs, or that you could make money, and most people doubted it. I mean, even up until 2010, people were saying you can't make money blogging. And I think it just depends on what they were looking at. So I went into it with the idea that I wanted us to have another income. We were getting out of debt. We'd been, 2007, 2008, we realized how much debt we had, and we wanted to make some changes. So that was really driving my efforts at making money writing. And I told my husband, I'm going to make money doing this. And it wasn't until I had numbers to show, see, I made money doing this, it took a while to get to that point. So I think part of it was that I had little children, and you could clean up after little children all day long and it'd still be a mess. So why not just stop cleaning up? Some of my attitude was like, why should I do this all day? Because it's just going to get messy anyway. So I just kind of put stuff off, and I let a little thing slide. But eventually kind of came around to making sure that our kids were equipped to do stuff around the house, getting on a schedule, making sure that we kind of righted the ship. So thankfully that season of total chaos didn't last very long, but it also came on the heels of being postpartum, moving cross country, my mother-in-law passing away from cancer. I mean, it was a really crazy year. So it was like, there were so many things in my life that I couldn't control, but sitting at the computer and writing, that was something that I could I'm in charge of this. I'm in charge of what happens here, and everything else around me is out of chaos, but this part I can do. And so I think, I didn't know about it till afterward. Read an article about postpartum obsession, and it's different than postpartum depression, but that a lot of times women get obsessed with something after having a baby. And so, I didn't get a psychological, nobody diagnosed me that way, but looking back, it's like, okay, that's kind of what that first year was about, was just being, I can't control all the chaos around me, but I can this thing I can control. And so we kind of rode that out and kind of started feeling normal again, and, finding a new normal really is what I call it. So,
how did you find that new normal?
I think a lot of it came out in writing. One of the books that I ended up self-publishing was called Organizing Life as Mom. And it came with it, it was kind of my process of getting the ship, kind of balanced out, and creating planner pages and finding systems that helped me keep track of school, keep track of home, keep track of the money, all these different things, and just being a little bit more assertive. I wanted to say aggressive, but just being a little bit more assertive and not being a victim of my whatever circumstances happened in every day, but just being a little bit more, I can do this, and here's how I'm going to do it, and coming up with a plan. And so I documented that 2 years later in Organizing Life as Mom. That was really helpful. I think that process of figuring out how I work best and how I can stay organized. And really for me, it's thinking on paper, that's for me, that helps me more than talk. I like to talk, but writing really is kind of my therapy in many ways.
We're going to pause for just a second. Jessica, I want to make sure there's an echo coming.
Okay.
And do you just hear me in your earphones, right?
Yeah.
It seems like it's a blab bug. So, and to be honest, I'm not sure. Oh, I can totally hear, like, I don't hear my my echo anymore. That's weird. Okay. So blab,
maybe it was in my ears. I don't know.
That's so weird. Like, I can't hear myself now. Cause okay, perfect. This is good. This is a good sign.
Okay.
And a sweet, listener, Nanny, she doesn't hear it either. She's the one that mentioned, she's like, oh, I can hear the echo. So it's perfect now. We're going to resume. And I'm going to ask you a question, clarifying.
Okay.
Jessica, can you share some of the strategies that you used to get out of that? Like maybe some of the strategies that you mentioned in the book? Yeah.
So, kind of one of my main things that is kind of, it recycles every season, every year kind of thing. I liken it to a conversation I had with my husband in my head, because we didn't have to have the conversation in real life because I knew what he was going to say. So I went down, I'll do that sometimes in advance, because then it may not be worth having that conversation if I know what he's going to say. And I knew he would say, well, what is it that you do want? And so I think that, it was about something for the house, but that's a really important thing that we moms need to know is, what is it that you do want? What is that vision for a life that you want to have? And so what I ended up doing was creating a page that kind of, it's kind of a brain dump kind of thing. This is my current planner. And so, it's what I want. I want connectedness with my family. I want a clean house. I want good food. I want travel and fresh air. Like, what are the things that I want us as a family to experience? What do I want our home life to be? And so painting that vision for myself, so I have clarity about where is it that I want us to go. Simple finances, good books, school to be effective and efficient. I wrote down all those different things that would be my dream life, right? And then work backward from that, and think about each of those areas and how to work those into our lives, and how to, like, for instance, I made again, I'm on paper, right? So this was my word for the year was priority. And so then in each section are different areas of my life and specific things. So for instance, we homeschool. And so to teach my children well. And so first thing is school before other less important things, So even though, last Friday I was feeling like I had some deadlines, I had some things to write, but it's like, my kids' education is more important than this deadline, and they're going to live if I don't get it till the end of the day. But I need to make my kids a priority. And so making those decisions ahead of time so that, that school is more important than this other thing. And so having those little examples for myself already planned out, kind of already decided in my head, kind of helps me. I'm not really answering your question from 2008, but this is a process that has evolved over the years. Is that having that vision, reminding myself of that vision, refining that vision, and then what are the specific things that I can do to get us closer to that ideal thing. And then, then that plays out into a time budget and making sure that I'm giving every minute a name. So anybody who has followed Dave Ramsey, they know that for his budgeting philosophy, you give every dollar a name. You know, when you get your check, you lay out where is all this money going to go, right? And then you make sure it goes there and that it didn't escape to Starbucks for a latte when it needed to go for this other thing. And so the same thing happens with our time, you know, is that if we're not giving and I did not put my babies on schedules. I have always resisted that, but I realized this is the only way we're going to function. This is the only way I'm going to feel good about how I spend my day, is if I make sure I know where I'm giving those minutes. And so
I love that you connected that with Dave Ramsey, because like everybody, we're like so aware of Dave Ramsey and what he's teaching, and correlating that, adding that into a time budget is incredible. It's incredibly amazing. Now, so what does your time budget look like?
Let me find it for you.
Oh, no. You could just...
Yeah. So what I do is at the start of each week, I have a blank grid, and then I start filling it in. I am so sorry. We will just hang up on that person. There we go. It will stop ringing. So I have a grid. And so at the start of every week, then I fill in, the things that I have to do, or that I want to do, or that are regular things. I am so sorry.
No, it's okay, Jen.
We will. Can't turn the ringer off on this sucker. I didn't. That wasn't on your list, was it? I think we're done. Okay.
Jessica, no worries. Like this, and this is going to be all edited out, so no worries.
Right. Sorry.
It's okay.
So, and I'm sorry. I've been so worried about looking at the camera that I haven't looked at the comments. So
don't worry. You're so sweet, Jessica. Like don't worry about it at all. Like I will get to them, and if it's a question, but just to mention really quick, Mama at number, but you can read it now. She loves the idea of budgeting your time.
Yeah. So I think we can fritter it away on Facebook. We can fritter it away, doing things, but then we go, I didn't have time to do the laundry today. It's like, well, yeah, you probably did. And sometimes I will, I'll map it all out, and then I run out of space. Like, okay, I don't have time to do all of these things. And so what has to give, or what, what is going to help me do these things? And so, for instance, last week, my husband needed to go, he got the cars worked on. And so he needed to go pick up a car. And I was trying to get work done, and we're trying to, we're discussing, okay, he needs a ride, And I was like, oh, we have an 18-year-old who can drive, and he's home, and he's going to go, and he didn't want to go, but we made him go because it's like, it's finding somebody else to be able to do that thing that is on your list. And so whether it's delegating, or sometimes I will kill two birds with one stone. So, and that usually happens during exercise. Like if I want to read a book, I'll take my iPad and I go to the gym and I read on the treadmill, and I can walk pretty fast at 3 to 4 miles an hour and still read my books. And I have a really fun time on the treadmill if it's a good book, or I do that. We have an exercise bike in the garage, so I will do the same thing. Or I take my daughters walking with me. If, we go on a mile walk in our neighborhood kind of thing. And so we're getting time together. We're all getting exercise. It's just finding ways to loop those things together so that you're making good use of your time, and, obviously not minimizing that time with your children, but anytime you can bring them into what you're doing. And I think maybe that answers one of your first questions earlier. I went to a Sally, now I hear your echo. I went to a Sally Clarkson conference in 2008, and she talked about including her children in the work that they did and really making that a priority. And so I think anytime that we as moms can include our kids in the things that we're doing and make that part of the experience, then that's a really good thing. You know, it serves dual purposes. So when I was writing Best 100 Juices for Kids, you know, that was a family thing. You know, my kids gave me feedback. They tasted every juice. They told me what they liked and didn't like. I wrote it all down. I mean, it was definitely a family project. And so they are very much a part of that book. It didn't turn out to be as popular as we had hoped, but it's a wonderful memory that I have from them, you know, from spending time with them. And so I think anytime you can include your children in your work, that's good. But also anytime you can get alone time to do your work without interruption is good too.
So you homeschool. How do you do your work without interruption?
What currently works now is that I work on Saturdays. And so it's come to the point that the boys have my boys are the older four. So, you know, they're all 11 and older, and they don't really need mom for anything particular because on Saturday they're just going to play and hang out. My girls, who are 7 and 9, that's a toss-up. And they're very relational, and they want to come tell me all the exciting things. So that has been a little bit harder to make it happen. But I've found that if I can get most of my writing done on Saturdays, then I'm focused on school and home Monday through Fridays, and Sundays are like rest. And I'm not going to turn on my computer if I can help it, and not do work stuff, and, you know, try to chill on Sundays. So that's kind of the goal. It doesn't always work out perfectly.
So you mean that you don't work all week, you homeschool your children, and then you just work once a week on Saturday?
Well, it depends on how you define work. So for me, the hardest part that I can't do, like, if I'm going to write, I need to be like head down, and I need to be in it, and I can't be interrupted. I can't write stuff that's worth reading in 15-minute increments. I really need to just be focused. So that's the work that I really need to focus on. So during the week, I might schedule social media because I can do that in 15-minute chunks here and there, and it doesn't take as much focus as writing a full post or, you know, making sure that I'm not good at switching. Like, I'm an all or nothing kind of person. So even growing up, if I was going to read a book, I was going to read that book all day long and not stop to eat if I didn't have to. Or in high school, I liked sewing clothes. And so I would spend all day at the sewing machine, and I didn't stop. So my workflow for writing is kind of like that. I need a big chunk of time, and it's been hard to find that big chunk of time during the week. There have been weeks where I've had to find that big chunk of time, and it's not, I feel stressed and I don't do well in the other areas that I'm supposed to do. So it's, you know, running errands. The weekdays I try to make for running errands, doing school, focusing on home things, and then I'll throw in the social media. And, you know, if I have time, you know, like if there's an hour and everybody's happy, then I might write, but I'm not putting that expectation on myself that I have to get something done. So,
oh my gosh, that is incredible. Like, I don't think I've ever met a mompreneur who commits herself so much to her children and her life at home, and then has that chunk, that day where she works. It's incredibly inspiring, Jessica. And I'm so inspired right now. And I hope those of you who are watching live are too, because I'm sure you pretty are. Nina even said, very inspiring.
I don't think that every season of life has allowed us to do that. So, you know, if we rewind, when we were heavy into hockey, it's like all day Saturday was devoted to hockey games. Yeah. And So it's just this current season. And like I said, with that time budget, that changes with the season. So it's not like, when my kids were really little, and I was, even before I started writing, my husband said, Saturday mornings you have completely off. As long as you're back at lunchtime with a plan for lunch, because he didn't want to watch all these little kids and figure out lunch. Yeah. So I would get up as early as I could possibly get up so I could leave the house, and I would have that chunk of time. And so, in the early years before I was writing, I would go shopping. I would, we lived in Kansas, so I could leave my groceries in the car all day long in the winter time, because it's 8 degrees outside, they weren't going to melt. And, so I did that kind of stuff, just fun stuff for myself. But then when I started writing, and then later when I started blogging, then I was spending that time at Panera with my computer, and that's where I got my time. But it's evolved and it's changed over the years and the seasons, and we're just currently in a season where that works. But going into the summer, it's going to be a little different. And so we're talking about a different pattern, where my kids might be at camp during the day, and where it's located is a cafe with Wi-Fi. And so I could drop people at camp, and then I could have 3 hours every morning to work, and then we all go home and we can play and we can do stuff. So we're playing with that idea. It's going to cost money if we did it that way, but it could have a trade-off. We're trying to figure that out.
Oh my gosh, Jessica. Okay. You're like hitting all my buttons as far as like inspiration. I appreciate you so much.
Good.
So I love that you mentioned seasons, because it's so important to account for that. Often we compare our beginnings to somebody's middle. So for example,
how old are your kids?
Mine are 7 and 5.
Right. So that's a hands-on relational, mommy, look at this. And it's like, did you really need to tell me about that? You feel like saying, couldn't have wait till later, but it can't when you're 5 years old. So sorry.
Yeah. And I mean, so many moms here saying very, very cool. Nina said, very inspiring. Nina said, love that you put your kids first. Natalia said, I love that you give so much time to your family and 1 day of the week for full-time writing. That's incredible. I mean, I agree. And then Mama Outnumbered, which is Kaylin, said, so often we hear the opposite of this. And I have to agree with Kaylin on this, like 100%. We hear about working all week and being off 1 day for completely focusing on your kids. And so I absolutely love that you flip that. And Kaylin, I could not have said any better. Like, I don't think anyone could have said that better. Like, that is so true. And then Natalia said, it's so good to see that this is possible to devote most of your time to the kids and still do well in your business. I'm trying to stick with that plan. So your message is incredibly inspiring.
Well, that's good, because I don't feel like I measure myself up to, other bloggers or what I perceive other people are accomplishing. And I go, and I really just had a sobering experience it was about a year ago. Right now, I was at a curriculum meeting for other homeschool moms. We were sharing what we were doing, and I saw how involved they were and how focused they were on their curriculum. I was like, oh, well, we've kind of we kind of coasted through the year, and everybody can read and everybody's fine. And, but I wasn't as into it as they were. And I'm still not as into it as they are, because I've got 5 kids that I'm teaching. So you can only get so into it when you're spread thin. But it was just that, okay, it was kind of that wake up call that I needed to step it up and
oh my gosh,
do better. So
that's incredible. And I wonder if this is my wake up call, because I do homeschool my kids too. And to be honest, I'm not as devoted as some of my homeschooling mamas are. And like, they do all these science projects and all these things. And I'm just like, we're lucky if we get 3 subjects done. Like,
but here's the question though. Would you do the science projects if you weren't doing this?
If you weren't working, would you still be, because I don't know that I would be. Exactly.
Because I don't like those. And, like, we wouldn't be doing, so you got to be honest with yourself. Like
That's so interesting.
Compare yourself to yourself in a different situation, not yourself to them in a different situation, because
very interesting.
We excel at history, literature, languages, science and math are not our favorite, but we do them. But and part of it, I've spent a small fortune on science curriculum until I found one but we changed it every year for like 10 years, trying to find one that worked. And we finally found one that worked.
Which one is that, if you don't mind sharing?
It's called Science in the Beginning. It's by Berean builders, and they're very doable experiments. I don't love how the book is laid out for kids, but for mom to read and for you to do the experiments, it's doable. We haven't been able to do it at quite the same pace that they have, because it just takes me a while to get through everybody. But we're doing it, 1 or 2 times a week, and just at a slower pace than everybody else. So
wow, very cool. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So not everyone is a homeschooler here, but I am, and then Kaylin is, and Kaylin said another homeschooler mama who struggles like crazy with comparison. I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
Artsy mama. I'm boring. I'm a boring homeschooler. So Kaylin, I'm with you, girl. I feel like I'm a boring homeschooler too, but I feel like kids learn through play, especially at this age where 5 and 7, and they're like digging in the earth, finding earthworms, and they're just like getting dirty. And I'm like, you know what? This is your science lesson.
Right. And I think that, and really going through their passions and their interests. My oldest, I blogged about it years ago, but my daughter was a toddler. We thought she had eaten something at the park. We stopped at the library, which is by the rec center. So then I'm talking to the people at the rec center, finding out what plant did she eat and was it poisonous? And he's over in the library with the other kids. He was about 12 or 13 at the time. And he started researching wild edible foliage because he was just curious. Is there really stuff growing out there that you could eat? And that took him on a year-long journey where he would go hiking. He would have my husband take him hiking every Saturday, and he would go find stuff that he recognized from his manuals and his books, and he'd come home and he'd make a salad with them and he'd eat these things, and so it was like, yeah, your science is your, we did other lab sciences as well, but we would just encourage that passion. And I think that's what, and he got into a 4-year state university. He's getting straight A's and he's totally bored. He told me that it's just work because he's bored in his classes. And I think that may be just a undergraduate thing, but it's like, we didn't do, we weren't as good as I thought everybody else's homeschool was, and he's still doing well. So I think it's instilling in your kids that love of learning so that they want to find out things. And so anyways, the experiment's working at the moment.
So awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Yeah. That's thank you so much for sharing homeschooling. Although this is not a homeschooling podcast, I want to move on.
Sorry.
That was really, no, don't apologize, because I'm curious myself. And so I just want to be respectful to the others listening. Right. Go back to when you started your blog. I understand this was back in 2008, but things moved a lot quicker as far as like getting traction. How soon did you start breaking even and maybe even bringing in an income?
I think by the end of that year, I had put up blog her ads, and so I was making a small amount in ad revenue. At the end of 2009, early 2010, I switched to the now defunct Lifetime ads, and those were really good. So it was by the middle of 2010 when I was, doing our monthly number crunching and was able to show my husband, look, this is how much you made at your job. This is how much I made at my job. And he went, what? Because they were really close to each other.
Wow.
And that has, ebbed and flowed over the years. Ad revenue has fluctuated greatly over the last 5 years. But I've tried to follow Crystal Payne's words of wisdom to have multiple streams of income. So we monetize through ads, through sponsored posts, through self-published ebooks. through affiliate links and through the cookbooks. So
That's
there's
wonderful.
a variety of sources so that if one is down, maybe some of the others can pick up the slack.
That's very smart. Yeah. That's very, very smart. Don't put all your eggs in one basket and have them dispersed around.
Right.
That's super smart. So, and thank you for sharing that. And now, do you still run those lifetime ads on your blog?
Lifetime went out of business a few years ago. They didn't go out of business, but they stopped offering ads to bloggers, is what they did. So, so now I currently run Amazon CPM ads, some Google AdSense, and a company called Riot New Media has some ads. So I manage my own ads.
Wow. That's a lot of work.
Well, I just kind of set them and forget them. So I don't, I may change out the pass back on the Amazon stuff, but I don't really mess with them too much because I just don't have time. So there's lots of areas where I put things on autopilot that maybe could be doing better, but I just don't.
Pick your battles.
You do.
Yeah,
and
I think that's important.
And so, producing good content and, and finding the time to do all these other things. I do most of my social media myself. The only one that I've delegate elsewhere is Pinterest. And I think you had Kate from Simpleton Media on recently. Yeah. So Kate and her team handle my Pinterest for Good Cheapy.
Awesome.
But otherwise, and I have an assistant. It's my youngest sister who came on about 4 or 5 years ago when her husband was going into law school and they needed to, have another income. And I needed help. And so she helps me a lot with some of the site stuff and the ebooks that we produce. And so, but other than that, it's kind of a one-woman show. So
very interesting.
So I'm just scraping and clawing and trying to do it all as best I can. So
okay, so no, that really helps for us. Like, it's really hiring help is so important. It's some of the things that you have to do, you don't have to do them because you could just pass them on.
Yeah, and yet at the same time, don't compare yourself to somebody who has this huge team, and maybe they're making the revenue to pay for the whole huge team, and then they're making more revenue because they have a team. And it's like, well, I don't have a team, so I'm only going to get as far as I'm going to get, and that's okay. So I think it's that same situation with any business. However you're able to expand. Yeah. Like our mechanic moved to a bigger facility, so now he has 10 guys working for him, and he's doing a lot better. But it's getting yourself to that place where you can expand to that bigger, whatever, however that plays out in your business.
Yeah, that's very helpful for sure. So now, how long did you go in, and how long after you started your blog that you self-published a book? And how did it happen that you self-published and then you got a publisher deal? How did that work?
Well, I had in 2010, I'd had it in my head for years, probably 15 years, that I wanted to write a freezer cookbook. And my husband just thought that was nuts. Who's going to buy a freezer cookbook? And I'm like, well, there are some freezer cookbooks. He's all right. There already are some freezer cookbooks, So he's the realist and I am the dreamer, and that's how we roll. But I'm also pretty stubborn. And so talked to a couple of friends who had published cookbooks. One in particular, Erin Chase, and she recommended that I just go for it. So I got the book that she recommended about writing a book proposal. And so I spent that summer in my, carving out time to write a book proposal, and was able to send it to an editor, and he just ripped it to shreds and said, no way, this sucks.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry. And so I cried like I hadn't cried in a really long time. And after a while, I just said, okay. And then I set up putting together Organizing Life as Mom, the book that I told you about.
And then are you following the same blueprint from what Erin Chase recommended?
Well, that was just for a book proposal. So Organizing Life as Mom, I just decided I'm just going to write this myself. And things had gotten to be where it was pretty easy to self-publish in terms of, and so when I say self-published, I'm talking digitally. I'm not probably going to mess with physical self-publishing, but digitally, what was unique about Organizing Life as Mom is that the PDF pages were fillable, that you could sit and type into the documents and print them out. And so in 2010, nobody was doing that. Wow. Now that's like comes standard on most of these PDF programs, but I paid big money. You know, it's amazing how technology changes. Yeah. And I said to my husband, this is so expensive. If I buy this program to do this thing, it's gonna be so expensive. And he's like, well, you got to spend money to make money, right? Got to move into that bigger facility, hoping that you can hire the team to work on the cars, right? Mm-hmm. So we did it, and it more than paid for that thing. So that was really surprising, and so I did that. Right, I was publishing that right about the same time that Erin said, I finally told her, I said, yeah, I said it to this editor, and he like totally ripped it to shreds. And she's like, oh my gosh, well, that's not the end of that. Send it to my agent. And so I sent it to her agent. She had me change a few things. I signed a contract with the agent, and within 2 weeks we had sold the Freezer Cookbook to the Harvard Common Press. So,
oh my gosh. Okay. Can we go back a little bit? So this is incredible. This is absolutely incredible. And it's so good to have friends who are there to support you and who don't let you pity yourself and just move on. Right. So what was that resource that Erin shared? Can you share that with us?
It is by Elizabeth Lyon. Somebody might need to look it up on Amazon because I'm going to get the title wrong. How to write a nonfiction book proposal or something like that. So you'll have to verify. But Erin and I have a mutual friend, Stephanie O'Day, and Stephanie had used the same book to write her proposal. So it seems to have worked in these instances. So, if you're not sure what to do or how to write it, but again, this was 2010, so there may be stuff that's updated since then. I don't know.
It's revised and updated. I'm going to send a link. It's not really pretty as like a book.
No, it's not.
But hey, it sounds really
But good. It walks you through the chapters. It walks you through every single thing. And so for my second book, they came to me with that idea after we'd already negotiated contracts for books number 3 and 4. So they bumped number 2 in front of the 3 and 4, and 3 and 4, it was just verbals. I started to write a big proposal, and they're like, you don't need to spend time writing a proposal. Just talk to us. So the Freezer book was really the only one that I really had to write a proposal for. The others were either, hey, we've got this idea, would you do it? Or, hey, what do you want to write your next books on? Let's just go back and forth. So while I had spent time writing one proposal, it was just a couple pages. It wasn't full blown. They were like, yeah, we don't need that from you. We'll just talk about it.
Wow.
So I wrote 4 books in basically 4 years, and
that's a lot of work.
That was tiring.
How did you manage to write so much?
That was 700 recipes in all. And the first book could have half be blogged recipes, and then the rest were not so much. There's a very minimal amount of recipes that are available online. The majority are not, and so people would need to buy the book. It's because people feel ripped off. It's like, well, I saw all this on this person's blog, and now it's all in this book. Like, why do I need the book when I can get it for free?
Exactly.
So it makes sense, and so I'm very protective of that philosophy. And I get a little. It's hard because you said, a lot of this business is based on word of mouth, and you want people to like your products. You want them to like your blog. You want them to share it with people. Yeah. So when you send cookbooks to bloggers to review, and we have this press approved list of recipes that can be reprinted. And the same goes not just for bloggers, but also for newspaper people. And it's like, that's a great review, but you went off the list, so it thankfully hasn't happened too many times, but, just as an explanation to people out there, that's why there's the list, is to protect the value of the book, that it's not watered down, that, I found somebody, just a regular person, and she was probably, she had taken pictures of the recipes she liked and then she had uploaded them to Pinterest, and she was pinning them. And it was like, why are you doing that? It was dozens of pages from a book. So, and then the law team needs to go ask that Pinterest take them down. And it's, so, copyright issues and sharing, information sharing, when you're making a product to sell, it can get really complicated.
Interesting. I had no idea that even exists. So thank you for sharing the Pinterest,
it's the only time I've ever seen it, and I shared it in my food bloggers group on Facebook, and they were just like, I have never seen anybody do that before. Like it wasn't pinned of the post, maybe that's just, she uses Pinterest as her personal cookbook or something, but it was like, the pictures didn't go to a link. They just were the pictures, so it was kind of like, the same thing happens when people will, post the whole recipe in their Facebook, and then that gets shared 50 million times. And it's like, it would be great if you shared a link to the person's recipe and let it get shared 50 million times instead of sharing their recipe that they will now not get any benefit from your sharing. So yeah.
Interesting.
Took us on a rabbit trail. Sorry.
No, this was really great. I really, really appreciate it. And one last question. We're like totally running out of time, but I want to see if you could share some of the online tools that help you organize your business and life, and maybe even include your planner.
So last summer I revised. Organizing Life as Mom is still available. It has lots of extra planning pages for like everything under the sun. This is a pared down, it's called the Print and Go planner. And it seriously is print and go for people who don't want to mess with making a custom planner. It has just the basics, but the file is ready to just, like, I sent it to Staples and they printed it and bound it for me. And it's like, boom, I'm ready to go. So that's what I use for.
What is it called again?
It's called the Print and Go planner.
Print and Go.
The
Print and Go. Wow.
Yeah. And that's available at fishmama.com, which is my online store. And so that's what I use for meal planning, for day planning, for just keeping track of my goals and things like that. But then for my ed calendar, I use Google Calendar all the time, every day. That's because I can drag and drop and I can move stuff around. I can access it from anywhere that I am. I don't have to go find, a physical planner for that. I use Gmail. That's like, I love the Google products. I love the Google Suite products. My husband prefers Evernote, so he does a lot of his stuff that way. And we're currently working on a video series. He's pretty up to speed on videography and stuff like that. So we're working on a video course to hopefully be done by the end of the summer and released. But so anyways, but we share information via Google Docs, because then I can type up an outline to him and then share it with him, and he has access. And it's not, where was that email that you sent me? I'm like, go look in your Google Docs. It's right there. So those three online tools are probably my favorite at the moment.
I love Google tools too. So, wow. Well, Jessica, our time unfortunately has come to an end.
That was fast. I rambled at you. Sorry.
No, don't worry about it. And it was really interesting, actually, and very informative. So I really thank you so much for being here, for your time, and for sharing all the wonderful wisdom with us. So,
oh, thanks.
Thank you.
It was fun.
All right, I hope you enjoyed this amazing interview with Jessica Fisher. I always say this at the end of the show. I think this was one of the best interviews to date, even though every single interview is amazing. And I hope you will join us live next time, every single Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, where we have lively conversations just like this one. Except you can join in the comments and interact and meet other incredible mompreneurs. I'm your host, Vicky Lashenko, and this is the show that features amazing stories of the most remarkable mompreneurs. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you next time.